Hi Scorpio, welcome to your November 2018 love reading. It's Raina here. Oh my gosh. I just scooped up the cards that I had laid out. I've done your reading twice, and each time, I mean the last time it was like 20 minutes long, and it just was so noisy at the end that I didn't want you to have to hear it because some truck pulled up and there was heavy machinery. So I am doing the reading just like I'm going to just start all over from scratch. I figure maybe I need to give you a different message or something. So by the way, I had somebody ask me why I pull cards off camera, and the reason is like I if you notice, I go like this, and then I even have like a over there, you know, and some of them, because I don't have enough room, and I'm trying to create this whatchamacallit, this spread, and that's why I do it like that. So it's, as I said to the person, it's not about the cards. I mean, it's not about like, oh, I'm gonna put certain cards here that are the best cards. It's about the message behind the cards. And so anyway, we're going to do a different spread, and we'll see if this one, wow, you got a lot of major arcana on this one. Okay. So I wanted to say a couple things about transits, because in November, this is going to affect your love life. As I record this, it's the day before the Venus retrograde, which is happening in your sign. Venus retrograde, a time when you may hear from an old lover, may hear from somebody from your past, or you might meet somebody from a past life who you might be able to tell that they're from a past life. You start talking, and it's like you've known this person forever. So one of those two scenarios may come up. In your particular case, Venus starts in your sign and at some point goes back into Libra. Now, maybe I should have pulled up my ephemeris and figured out what exact date that is happening. I have a feeling it's going to be sometime in November, and when it goes into Libra, it's going to go into your 12th house. So that kind of like increases the likelihood of some kind of karmic connection being made with somebody. But understand that past life experiences could be challenging. It doesn't have to be that, oh wow, we're soulmates because we knew each other in a past life. Maybe you were enemies in another lifetime. I think enemies are people who have a strong karmic bond too. This is one of the reasons why I really tell people to work on forgiveness, because if you believe in all of this stuff, who knows? There might be a negative attraction, and you could wind up with this person in another lifetime if you're not careful. So if there's somebody that you're with or that you were with that you cannot stand, that they really did you wrong, the temptation may be to badmouth them and to hate them, to pour all this negative energy into them, but don't do it. Just try to dissolve that connection in a very like detached way, so that you don't have that sense of like negative attraction to them. And then maybe you will actually not have to deal with them. I was going to say get rid of them. So, okay. Let's look at what's going on here. Actually, I did get the Four of Swords in my other reading. And in that particular reading, I was talking about splitting up with a partner, maybe like getting a trial separation because of a new love interest coming into things. So I don't know if this reading will, I think this kind of goes along with that in a weird way because of the Fool card. But one thing that I want to say before I begin, and I think I forgot what I was going to say. Okay, let's just go. This has been an interesting day, to say the least. I guess I should start with this card. This is the Heart of the Matter. The Fool card indicates like absolutely new beginnings. And I have started to do tutorials on each of the major arcana cards. I've only done the Fool card, but if you're interested in learning more about the major arcana, you can start with that video. I put it into 2 parts. And it's all about embarking on a new phase of life. And I always see it in a love reading as possibly having just broken up with someone recently, and it's like, now it's your time to be free and to explore. So in particular, I can see somebody who was in a long-term marriage who is like, now I can breathe. Now I'm able to be who I came here to be. Maybe you felt like you had to fit into a mold when you were in this relationship. And now I remember what I was going to say. What I was going to say is that as I'm recording this the day before the Venus retrograde, it's also a couple of weeks before we have a full moon in Taurus, which is your opposite sign. And by the way, I got a lot of Taurus cards in that first reading. So that might pertain to some of you if you're dealing with a Taurus, just for a heads up. But Taurus is your opposite sign, so it's your 7th house of marriage and other committed partnerships. So I was wondering if that was like kind of giving me a hint that that's going to be a catalyst. Full moons can bring things to a head. If 2 people are married in a committed partnership and they have been avoiding dealing with a certain issue, it may come up in some way. And it may come up where you have to face it. If you've been in denial over something about your partner, it can lead to endings. And I think, yes, I wouldn't be surprised if there are some people who they just like break off right away, because Uranus is mixed into that. I think Uranus will be at 0 degrees of Taurus. I think right now it's at about 1 degree or something. And it's retrograding, but it does so very slowly. So it's probably like going to be at 0 degrees of Taurus. So the full moon is at 1 degree of Taurus. So it could indicate like snap decisions and endings, you know, where maybe things were holding on and then it's just like bam. Because you're a fixed sign, Scorpio. So you kind of resist change, but even you have your boiling point, and you might just be like, okay, I'm out of here. I've had enough. Now remember, I'm talking about, this is for the people that are watching in October. If you're watching in November, this would have been in the past. And now you are the Fool, and you're starting a new phase of your life, and there's a sense of adventure, and there's a, I think even for a Scorpio person who kind of might be a little bit leery of change, this sense of feeling like you have a blank slate, you know, that you can really start over again. And at the base of this reading is the 4 of Swords. Again, I think this kind of reiterates my last, the first one I did, where it's all about resting and recuperating from some sort of ordeal. Usually I would say that the person was under a lot of stress in that relationship. And so it might have been an abusive relationship, even if it was just psychologically abusive. That's really not good. And that can lead to a lot of physical stress, not to mention mental stress. The swords, represented by the Four of Swords, represent thoughts. And with the number 4, it's about getting your thoughts in order. But this is really a card that I associate with meditation. So it's not so much like even thinking as it is being. And in that zone of relaxation and restoration. I think restoration is a good way of putting it, actually. What crosses you is represented by the 6 of Pentacles. And if, for instance, you are walking away from a marriage, you may be afraid that you won't be treated fairly in court when it comes to the allotment of financial resources. So, for instance, if you had a business with your ex together, you may be afraid that it will be decided in the other person's favor. It also can mean this sense of you having to give them money for some reason, if you were the one that was the big earner. And that might have been one of the reasons for your dissatisfaction. This can also be a card of a tendency to put more energy, which, even though the Pentacles indicate money, it's also, you could look at it in a love reading as currency. You know, that's why they call it currency. Energy is currency, and the currents, the energetic emanations that are present in any action we take. If you're the type of person, the type of Scorpio who is always giving more than you're getting, it's important to really sit with yourself now that you're on your own path again, and now that you have your own mind again, that you don't have to be part of a team anymore, that you think about why that is. And I'm not talking about financial resources, although sometimes it may show up that way, where people try to buy love. And in that case, even attract people who are dependent in that way, who are takers, but who don't have their own resources to the same degree. And that could be why you are now worried about what you're going to receive from a settlement. But other than that, looking at just the energy you invest in relationships. Usually Scorpio can be in relationships a bit intense, a bit obsessive even, because of the nature of Pluto, which is this planet that is associated with love of power and of extremes in a way. And Scorpio rules that 8th house of intimacy that is really about shedding any superficial surface facades, you know, and really exposing your true nature to another person. But you have to trust someone in order to do that. And the irony is that you probably are demanding that of somebody else, but you're not willing to give it to them. And this is kind of one of the paradoxes of Scorpio, is the tendency to really bring out in other people their deepest, darkest secrets, and yet sitting there eating popcorn and, you know, keeping your mouth shut about your own shadows. And so this is simply about gauging responses. When you meet somebody, do they seem like really into you, or are they kind of like whatever? A Scorpio person, I think, tends to know when somebody is reciprocating the same type of passion that the Scorpio has for them back to them. But I could see a certain faction of Scorpios, even if they know deep down inside that a person isn't really as invested in them as they are in that person, they almost see it as a challenge, because the co-ruler of Scorpio is Mars, and Mars loves a challenge. So I would look at that. I would look at that as if you notice that happens where you're giving to another person, even just on the energetic level, and you're not getting back, that you learn how to pull away, that you don't just like double down, in other words. Because then you end up just kind of trying to impose your will on another person. You will love me, you know. The higher message is the Eight of Wands. And if you've been, it's almost like, I'm almost seeing this as the universe telling you that this has been in the making for a long time, that all of a sudden the dam has burst loose. And what that means to me is that perhaps you were kind of twiddling your thumbs and holding on to a certain, how shall I put it, you were hoping for change and it didn't come. And that's what makes me think that something around the time of that Taurus full moon on October 24th is that catalyst. But perhaps it was a long time coming, and then all of a sudden the dam burst loose. And all of a sudden, all of these, it's almost like pent up actions and feelings, everything kind of just spilled forward, and now things are kind of moving rapidly. And the first thing on the agenda is your new life, where you may feel like, wow, I am here and I have arrived in this. This is what I've been dreaming of, that I am finally set free. And yet it's kind of like, okay, now what? What do I do now? Because you may have been dreaming about it, but you weren't quite sure exactly how you were going to proceed. And now it's just everything is new to you again. And right now we have the High Priestess, and this kind of like reiterates what I was talking about with the full moon. So I just wanted to kind of clarify something that I think is probably going on here in terms of timing. Because I'm making this reading for the month of November, and we are still, when I'm recording this, like almost a month ahead of time, some of these things may be actually happening in October. And that's okay, because if you're watching in October, it's like you're getting a second October reading. And then if you're watching it later, you can corroborate with it and see if it was true. Obviously, this is a general reading, so I'm kind of taking a certain narrative based on what I see here, the trend. But what I am seeing as a trend is that I feel like it's possible that something comes out around the time of that full moon at the end of October that makes you aware that you were not given the truth about a matter. And I, having done another reading for you that I absentmindedly scrapped, before I pressed record, I remember that there were several cards that connected with the sign of Taurus. So I'm going to say that again, just in case that's important for somebody. Because when I get like several cards that all connect to the same sign, that's what made me think of that full moon, and I had forgotten about that. Since I am reading for November after all, but November is the aftermath of that. And the High Priestess is a card of getting in touch with your higher self. And you may know that something is going on in your life. Either you don't want to really investigate because then you might have to take action, or you're being told, you're being gaslighted. If you even question something, the other person is calling you crazy. So then you start to doubt yourself. But if you're going to go through any court battle or something like that, it might connect with finances. Who knows? Or maybe the other party was hiding assets that you will find out about. So that's always a possibility too. But it's also about trusting your gut. And if something doesn't seem right, to kind of honor that and don't believe what somebody else tells you. And usually Scorpio doesn't have to be begged to do that. You're very much the kind of person who tends to be very suspicious about other people's motives. But I'm just kind of putting it out there because there can be this tendency to be quite skeptical, but not necessarily believing in yourself. And you have to really connect yourself to your higher self, because even if you can't prove that somebody's doing something, at least you know that you're not in the wrong for wanting more out of your life. When I think of the Eight of Wands, there's a sense of passion. There's a sense of like, and it could be with a Leo, because we get that as the final card. And that might be saying it too, that the universe is bringing you a Leo, because you know what? Leos are very exciting. And you are drawn like a moth to the flame to Leos. What's coming in is represented by the Emperor. This could be, again, oh, you know, well, another fire sign is Aries, and this card connects to Aries. So there you go, if that's somebody that you might be interested in. But the Emperor could be talking about this judgment that has to do with a marriage, or if you're not married and you still are seeking legal counsel because you have shared assets that are kind of a pain to deal with, then you might be getting a hold of this guy. But this is a case of, I think, further evidence that you're moving on with your life. And this is definitely a possible sign of your own nature becoming more and more in control. And as I said with the Fool card, it is rather unlike you to be so free-spirited. But especially if you have come out of a very long-term relationship, you may feel like almost like you got let out of jail, because you may have been with somebody that was almost kind of like the Emperor. Sometimes the Emperor can be like a very authoritarian individual, very black and white, and they either see things as right or wrong, which can be very irritating when you're talking about different things, because it's not very sophisticated. It's not, that's not how life works, you know. Sometimes there are reasons why things are not as they seem, and you know, and it's too simplistic to just judge things on a very base level. But it could just be somebody, he's a person that you are getting involved with who is like a police officer. Their profession may be in law enforcement or in a military position. So if you're a woman who is attracted to men, this could be like an alpha male type of a guy who's, you know, I think Scorpio women tend to go after those alpha males because they represent that kind of strength that you find so attractive. And oh, needless to say, here we got the Strength card, and this is a card that is associated with Leo. But in terms of you're kind of operating from a position of strength. Again, coming from this Four of Swords, you may have even kind of had to physically do something to feel a sense of renewal, because you were like under great duress. And now you're a lot more physically in a good place, as well as mentally, which is very important because you may have doubted yourself. If something did come out in October, you may have questioned your sanity, that you believed in this other person, and yet when I say because of Uranus being hooked into this full moon, that it's possible that people will make these sudden breaks. If you do, you're not going to look back. It's not going to be like, oh, what did I do? You know, like an hour later, oh, I shouldn't have done that. No, this is going to be a liberation. So I feel like this is a wonderful time for you, Scorpio, where you are going to really be embarking on a new journey. And another thing, I'm trying to think, you're going to have, actually in November, the North Node is going into your 9th house of foreign travel. So you may even have opportunities in the next 18 months to, and these may come in a very serendipitous way, these opportunities, to travel long distance for maybe work or pleasure. Probably, I would assume, for most it would be more for work, but who knows? And that could indicate that you meet somebody that's from a foreign country. Who knows? Anything's possible, right? The transiting North Node can be destiny calling. And so it's a very exciting time for you in November. Jupiter going into your 2nd house of earned income in Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter, so very fortunate on that level. So awesome. I hope that you enjoyed this, Scorpio. Happy birthday to all of you. And if you'd like a private reading, please click on the link below this video. My website is RainaMoonAstrology.com. Take care. Bye.